More on those protests in Iran. I want to bring in a senior fellow at the Center for International Policy, as well as the editor and host of the Iran Podcast Negar Mortazavi. Thank you so much for joining us. President Trump says that he's now considering military action amid what activists are calling deadly anti-government protests across the Middle Eastern country. This comes as widespread internet outages have been reported, and a new security alert from the State Department is urging Americans to leave Iran. Why are we seeing such large-scale anti-government protests across Iran? And what does that say about the strength of Iran's current regime?
Thank you for having me. Well, as you suggested, this is initially the spark of this was an austerity measure by the government, an economic move of removal of certain subsidies. But this comes on the back of years and years of political, economic, social policies that have really angered a big portion of the population, I would say majority of the Iranian people, and they've taken to the street with protests time and again. Every few years we see mass protests like this. The government uses very brutal, violent, deadly crackdown, as we're seeing this time, and the protesters are sent back home, but the grievances are not addressed. So every time the protesters come back out, we saw them in 2009, 2019, 2022, most recent, it's pent-up anger, piled up grievances on top of each other that haven't been addressed. Iranians, middle classes, working classes see their lives just getting worse and worse. And some of these scenes that we see on the street are just absolute bravery and courage, but also hopelessness, people feeling like they have nothing to lose, and they essentially put their lives on the line when they come to the street.
In a post on social media today, President Trump announced a 25% tariff on any country that does business with Iran. Will this actually deter any of Iran's allies from stepping in?
I don't think so, because even more important than tariffs, the U.S. has very severe economic sanctions targeting every major industry in Iran. Multiple sanctions even have been layered. Iran is one of the most sanctioned countries in the world, which means not only the U.S. entities and companies can't do business with Iran, but even secondary sanctions would penalize other countries and companies around the world from doing business with Iran. And actually, these sanctions do go hand in hand with the massive corruption and mismanagement of the state inside the country. And that's what's brought this economy. It's a triangle of the mismanagement, of the corruption, and severe economic sanctions. And President Trump calls it maximum pressure. So on top of this maximum pressure, I think the tariff maybe in the long term will have some impact, but I just think the actual sanctions, economic sanctions, have really helped or hurt, I would say, and deliver this economic situation that we're seeing in the country right now.
There are currently 30,000 U.S. troops deployed to the Middle East and Persian Gulf region. How do you think the international community would respond if the U.S. does end up striking Iran?
It's unclear what the U.S. option is going to be, because the U.S. track record of intervention in the Middle East in the form of regime change or bringing political change to countries is just very controversial. I know President Trump has said he doesn't want to commit boots on the ground, so we're probably not looking at a model of Iraq and Afghanistan, which he's been critical of. But I'm not sure what this is going to look like. I'd like to know, is this sort of a Libya model, sustained air bombardments? Is it going to be something like what we saw in June, the 12-day war, when Israel attacked Iran and then the U.S. joined in attacking the nuclear sites? And I'm not sure how exactly that can bring sort of better governance or democracy for the people, which is something they're demanding. So it could lead to a collapse or weakening of the regime, which could potentially, it could go many ways, positive or negative, could potentially unleash even more chaos and instability in the country, and Iran, which wouldn't be bounded to Iran's borders, and it would spill over into the region, which is why many of the neighbors are also worried about the situation.
Negar, we thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate your insight.
Thank you.